Welcome to Compelling Topics, the only channel dedicated to the perspective of leading researchers from the Italian independent scene. Let's turn your minds on. In this second episode, Nicola Bizzi takes the investigation even deeper, literally and metaphorically, guiding us through a maze of ancient testimonies, forgotten documents, and unsettling discoveries hidden beneath the Earth's surface. From medieval ecclesiastical records to modern explorations of vast underground networks, Bizzi pieces together a narrative that challenges conventional history and raises a provocative question. What lies beneath our feet, and why has it been deliberately concealed for centuries? The world is filled with legends about intelligent civilizations living beneath the Earth's surface. Bizzi openly addresses the question his listeners inevitably ask: who on Earth are they? Are they ancient terrestrial civilizations that retreated underground after cataclysms and chose to remain there? Or are they alien civilizations that, due to the nature of their respiratory systems or environmental needs, have opted to dwell in the depths of our planet? Bizzi candidly admits he does not have an answer. He references the myths of the Hollow Earth, noting that entire books have been devoted to the subject. However, he clarifies that he cannot confirm the existence of a hollow Earth in the strict sense. What he does assert with confidence is that numerous cavities exist within the planet. Having never descended more than a few dozen meters below the surface himself, he cannot speak from direct experience. Yet many individuals, beyond Admiral Byrd, to whom he will later return, claim to have crossed certain boundaries and encountered not only intelligent beings, but a world far from dark, a radiant, luminous realm, illuminated by a mysterious green glow. The research conducted by the Kush couple has uncovered, through an impressive body of documentation, that during the Middle Ages, several noble feudal families in Germany and Austria were aware of these subterranean labyrinths and were even in direct contact with their inhabitants. But who were these beings? They were described as human-like, yet not human. Mythological traditions across the world are filled with similar figures: elves, gnomes, goblins, fairies, entities that intersect with the protagonists of countless legends. The East, in particular, abounds with references to underground realms such as Agartha, Shambhala, Shangri-La, and Siddhapura. Authors like René Guénon devoted themselves to discussing the mythical king of the world. In his Theogony, Hesiod recounts the Titanomachy. The Titans, rulers of the universe, are overthrown by the Olympian gods led by Zeus and imprisoned in Tartarus, a subterranean realm. Bizzi questions the true nature of this Tartarus. Hesiod describes it as a concrete place, even measuring its depth. An anvil dropped from above would take 9 days to reach it, and presents it as a real, existing space. If the Titans themselves were real, as much comparative mythology suggests, then it is plausible that the world said to imprison them might also be real. Bizzi also mentions the famous 1970s Japanese animated series Goldrake, Grendizer in its original version, in which titans imprisoned in an underground world, led by a queen, await their chance to break free and reclaim what was once theirs. He sees this as an example of how imagination interprets reality, drawing from extremely ancient narrative structures. In the hypothetical subterranean world Bizzi describes, two major realities would coexist. On one hand, titans or earlier civilizations driven underground after being overthrown. On the other, advanced civilizations that deliberately descended below the surface to protect themselves from catastrophic events and remained there. Bizzi does not commit to a definitive explanation of who these inhabitants might be. They could be ancient terrestrial civilizations that retreated underground following cataclysms, or alien civilizations that chose to live deep within the earth due to biological or environmental necessities. He openly admits he has no final answer, yet emphasizes that testimonies from those who claim to have crossed certain thresholds and encountered intelligent beings are numerous and strikingly consistent. A recurring element in descriptions of these subterranean worlds is the presence of a mysterious green luminescence. Bizzi finds references to it in the works of Alexandra David Neal, mystics and magicians of Tibet, as well as in those of Ossendowski and other authors, including Ivanov. All describe enigmatic regions of the underworld, lit by this peculiar greenish glow. With a touch of irony, Bizzi notes that Google's explanation for this phenomenon is fungal bioluminescence, a chemical reaction within certain fungi in which a molecule called luciferin, in the presence of oxygen and an enzyme known as luciferase, produces green light. An explanation that is scientifically intriguing, he concedes, yet wholly insufficient to account for descriptions of entire subterranean worlds illuminated by such a glow in caves devoid of fungi or any vegetation, places where explorers reported seeing nothing but rock. He does not rule out chemical reactions involving fungi, but observes that something doesn't quite add up. To support the possible reality of such environments, Bizzi recounts a disturbing episode drawn from Alessandro Markin's essay, The Hypogean Civilization. It concerns a group of Slovak partisans who, in October 1944 during the final phase of World War II, sought refuge in a cave in the Tatra Mountains near the villages of Plavinsk and Lubna in Slovakia. The account comes from the direct testimony of a Slovak army captain. The group had been found unconscious in a trench by a shepherd named Slavek, who carried them into the cave after administering rudimentary care. Before leaving, Slavek made the sign of the cross over each of them, over the cave itself, and, most reverently, upon the rear wall, where a small opening could be seen. He urged the captain not to venture deeper, confiding that the cave was part of an immense labyrinth filled with abysses no one had ever wished to explore, and that it was surely inhabited by arcane spirits. Driven by curiosity to understand what could so deeply frighten a man as seemingly solid and courageous as Slavek, the captain decided to explore the cave, armed with a rifle and a lantern. After about an hour and a half of walking through narrow passages and horizontal corridors, he came upon something extraordinary, a structure that appeared artificial, with a perfectly smooth wall, uniformly blue and black, suggesting an enormous cylinder roughly 25 meters in diameter embedded within the surrounding rock. The materials seemed to combine the properties of steel, silica, and rubber. His pickaxe left no mark, it simply bounced back with force. The captain fired several shots at the walls. The detonations produced roars like a speeding train, yet no impact could be heard. When he fired at the side walls, he saw large blue and green sparks and heard such a deafening noise that he had to cover his ears. The following day, he returned, covering himself in mutton fat to squeeze through a narrow passage, and entered the structure. Inside, he found an enameled surface, a rear wall warmer than the others, and the unmistakable sensation of being inside something endless, something that did not belong to any known terrestrial technology. In the end, he chose to withdraw, not least because his fellow soldiers were by then dead or in critical condition. Accounts like these, Bizzi argues, are extremely numerous. They describe individuals who found themselves underground not in simple caves, but within structures built with such advanced engineering skill that they cannot be attributed to any prehistoric civilization as described in school textbooks. The most striking part of Bizzi's presentation concerns medieval ecclesiastical documentation collected by the Kush couple and Leo Hinds. In a Franciscan monastery in the Austrian region of Burgenland, documents were discovered attesting to a diocesan synod held on October 11 to 12, 1447, under the leadership of Bishop Johann von Eyck. During this synod, it was agreed to seal all entrances to the hollow earth, referred to as the infernal realms. This synod took place alongside the Council of Basel, which the bishop had left prematurely that same year. Among the sites directly affected was a hypogean complex in the Vienna area known as the Caves of the 12 Apostles, initially used by the local church but later ordered to be closed and restricted, evidently because its use had become problematic for ecclesiastical authorities. Following the failure to enforce this ban, the Council of Trent in 1550 issued an even more radical directive. All access points to the world of the inner earth peoples were to be permanently sealed as quickly as possible, not only in Catholic countries such as Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and Italy, but also in Anglican, Orthodox, and Islamic territories. From 1550 onward, within just 16 years, all long-standing connections with these inner earth populations were severed. Across Europe, with very few exceptions, all known entrances to the subterranean world were destroyed and filled with millions of tons of debris. Ancient sites used for energetic communication with the underworld were also dismantled, their geometries and structures altered in such a way as to disrupt any frequency-based systems and direct channels of communication with subterranean inhabitants. This coordinated decision, spanning nations and religious traditions, is, Bizzi observes, of extraordinary significance. It implies that the religious authorities of the time were fully aware of the existence of these underground worlds and their inhabitants, and that they consciously chose to sever all ties while simultaneously erasing every trace of this reality. What drove them to such a drastic choice? Bizzi does not claim to know, but in his view, the mere existence of these documents is compelling evidence that something real and extraordinary lies hidden beneath the Earth's surface. Returning to the research of Alessandro Marcan, Bizzi introduces another intriguing possibility, that the inhabitants of certain subterranean structures may not have been of the same stature as modern humans. In his analysis of underground systems beneath the Lazio region, Marcan documented tunnels explored with robotic devices, because no human could fit, measuring only about 40 centimeters in diameter and dating back over 30 to 40,000 years. Not only could no human have excavated them with primitive tools, but the regularity of the excavation suggests machine construction. The question then arises, why tunnels of such small diameter extending for hundreds of meters? Bizzi's proposed answer is that these structures were intended for beings smaller than modern humans. This could explain the widespread presence of little people myths, elves, goblins, dwarfs, and gnomes in northern and European traditions. The ant people of the Hopi, small humanoid beings said to live underground. Tages, the Etruscan civilizing figure described as a childlike elder emerging from the earth, less than a meter tall, remarkably similar to the Hopi ant people. These are not cartoonish dwarfs, Bizzi emphasizes, but something real, entities that certain active and thriving groups maintained regular contact with, to the point of alarming the Catholic Church. The documents collected by the Kush couple and Leo Hinds suggest that episcopal synods, in conjunction with the Council of Basel, decreed the sudden closure of all access points to the subterranean worlds. An extraordinary decision, implying direct knowledge and sustained interaction with these realities. The phenomenon, Bizzi notes, is not limited to Central Europe or Lazio. Italy alone is traversed by hundreds of kilometers of underground structures. At the military level, some of these are well known. Beneath the mountains of Friuli, tunnels have been adapted for military use, forming vast underground highways stretching for hundreds of kilometers, reserved exclusively for the armed forces. Similarly, the Gran Sasso laboratories of ENEA were not placed there by chance, but because pre-existing cavities and labyrinthine structures already existed beneath the mountain. The same applies to Monte Canero, where pre-existing structures were expanded and repurposed for military use. The same pattern appears in Peru, Bolivia, Brazil, Spain, and countless other countries. Bizzi states that he does not know of any place in the world where such underground structures do not exist. They seem to be everywhere. Regarding Finland, Bizzi admits his own surprise. Being half Finnish on his mother's side, of Russian origin, he has visited Helsinki dozens of times and never heard of traditions involving subterranean worlds beneath the Finnish capital. Yet the Kush couple, currently working in that region, are reportedly exploring a network of underground tunnels near Helsinki of astonishing antiquity. Since Finland was covered by glaciers until the end of the last ice age, any such structures would date back at least 12,000 to 20,000 years, and likely far earlier, perhaps to a time when the poles were positioned differently and higher latitudes enjoyed a temperate climate. Bizzi concludes with a synthesis that captures the full scope of the issue. Subterranean worlds exist, composed of artificial tunnels excavated by advanced civilizations. Within these worlds, intelligent beings may have chosen to reside in order to protect themselves from the catastrophic events that have periodically devastated the Earth's surface. A world characterized by a mysterious green luminescence, inhabited by beings similar to humans yet not entirely human. Beings with whom our civilizations maintained contact for centuries, until a supranational, interfaith authority in the 16th century decided to sever all ties permanently. The question that remains, who on earth are they, still lacks a definitive answer. Yet the accumulation of clues, documents, testimonies, and physical evidence surrounding it is, in Bizzi's view, far too substantial to be dismissed. That's all for today. See you in the next episode of Saturday Classics, here on Compelling Topics.
I went to